The UN in action. The recent kidnapping of Over.UN Vice President Mitu has focused the international community's attention on Over.UN, a small, oil-producing South American country. Blamed on guerrilla forces, the kidnapping is the latest in a series of attacks against the Over.UN government. Leadership of the state has changed hands 6 times in the last decade, and the newly elected government has a shaky hold on Over.UN, especially in rural areas. An emerging democracy, the government uses political violence and intimidation to maintain control. The current president is a former general whose association with a militia group that kills unarmed civilians is thought to have intimidated voters into electing him. A petroleum-rich nation, Over.UN's economy is at the mercy of constantly fluctuating oil prices. While the government controls the oil industry, guerrillas engage in drug trafficking to finance their operations. The chaos of this unstable state creates informal markets through which foreign drug cartels can easily move and obtain drugs. In an attempt to solidify its power, the government has created laws prohibiting freedom of expression, coming down hard on anyone who speaks out against the government. This denial of freedom of expression, coupled with the country's lack of stable infrastructure and public transportation, cripples communication between Over.UN citizens who wish to organize against the government. News about the state's rampant human rights abuses travels slowly. Average citizens are either unaware of the atrocities being committed outside their community or they're scared into silence. Those who work to ensure basic human rights are seen as anti-government and become the targets of harassment and sometimes violence. The government has been accused of numerous human rights abuses, including prohibiting labor organizations, exerting state control over the courts, abusing prisoners, and controlling the media. In response to this repression, a number of guerrilla groups have formed to oppose the government, leading up to the vice president's kidnapping. These groups have taken control of a number of villages in the countryside, possibly due to the general public's fear of speaking out against the state. The guerrillas do not have the support needed to overthrow the government. Instead, they employ terrorist tactics to scare the Over.UN government. At the same time, loosely organized pro-government groups have been growing in number and strength. These militia forces are not officially government-sponsored, but they have close ties to the military, and it is clear that the government has turned a blind eye to their criminal actions. These groups often violently enforce government laws that limit freedom of expression. Pro-government militia groups have also been condemned internationally for kidnapping journalists and for the widespread use of child soldiers. Violence in the rural areas of Over.UN is widespread and deadly. In the last 2 years, hundreds of civilians have been massacred in attacks by pro-government groups and by the guerrillas. The violence has forced thousands of civilians to flee across the border, taking refuge in neighboring countries. A few such countries have sought UN aid to help them provide humanitarian relief for these refugees.